your being in the Hall of Fame?
Mm-hmm. Well, one, it's a great honor. I'm gonna be honest. It's, you know, and what I began to realize, to be a part of something like that, it doesn't matter if it's in Cleveland with the known Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or other cities, or where, you know, the cities where you come from, or where you know, you're in, you know, it's like it's similar to Kennedy Center honors, where they're honoring you for the work that you've done and what you've contributed as a musician / singer, writer, or whatever, to American music and culture. And I used to joke about it, you know, and say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they put me in that thing. But I understand, you know, now why. It's, you know, it's done. And I'm grateful that they've seen what I consider some of these little accomplishments that I've done, but I had to realize some of these accomplishments, you know, I've done was really, well, let's just say this. I understand, but from the aspect, I understand that, okay, when people acknowledge, you know, your accomplishments, what I began to realize and see is that with the accomplishments, your name doesn't have to be in lights in order to make the, you know, to contribute. It's like in the military. There's certain, you know, there's these people, or this person or persons that have contributed, and they just keep moving that we never knew about. Like, for instance, the new movie's coming out now about a group of African American women who helped with space flight, and they're mathematicians, you know.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and you know, it's an untold story, but what it is like we all have a story. Everyone, we do. We have a story to tell. Some of us just get the opportunity to have it heard by a bunch of people.
And that's a great contribution to your legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When people hear your story about your life from a young age to now and how you have contributed. So when people ask you how you have contributed and they find out you're in the Hall of Fame, how do you like to share with them your story?
The way I share it with them, and I tell them, you know, I ask them, I said, do you want the abridged version or do you want the unabridged version? You know, no, but I try. I'll be honest. I try to abridge it as much as I can, but I realized there was so much, you know, to it, like in a life and everything that happens with it. You know, you want to try to, how I said, make a summation of it.
Right.
You know, but even when you do, you try to get all these things in it, but there's so much that had taken place, you know.
So that summation includes what for you?
Well, summation of where I actually gotten started, and I have to say this because you know, the way I look at it, I said God's got jokes, and I'm the brunt of those jokes. And because, well, when I've actually gotten started playing music, when I was between 17 and 19, I want to say, actually playing drums. I mean, I did it in junior high school. Not play drums, but I sang in the choir. And 7th grade, I played trumpet and clarinet. But the thing was, DC public schools were not going to pay for a custom trumpet for a left-handed player or a clarinet for a left-handed player.
Got it.
You know,
Right.
so, but anyway, I actually, when I got to really playing drums, I was in my youth group, when I was a member, Peabody Street Mennonite Church, in Northwest Washington, D.C. That's, that's my part of town there. And the pastor that we had, he was the first African-American Mennonite pastor that, hailed from Baltimore, to pastor a congregation, a Mennonite congregation. And when I look back at it, and I was like, wow, okay, so when something like this, there's something that's going to take place. Just don't see it at the time. But when I first started, I was, my buddies of mine, I forget Travis's last name, he played bass. I was the oldest in the band. And the guys were younger than, I was about a couple years or something like that. Frank Barbie, he played drums, bass, and guitar, and he played piano. But he wanted to play guitar, so he was the first guy to show me, this is what you do, And from there, how could I say it? It came about where throughout the Mennonite circuit, if you will, if you can call it that, what ended up happening was that we started performing,
outside the church.
Outside the church, and these functions, these Mennonite functions, and what have you, big Mennonite these festivals, and and I remember my pastor there, he loved it, because he was like our, he was our spiritual advisor, of course, but he was our manager as well.
Nice.
So when I look back at it, man, I was like, to see the smile on his face, and it made a difference, But also, okay, we were making donations that would give. Okay, I'm like, that was great, but that was also, I look back of making a living, playing drums when I was 17. 17, 18, something, like
So
that.
where did you go from there? So from that experience, what was your next highlight experience?
Well, it stopped for a moment because see, when I was playing, at the time when I started playing in a youth group and playing drums, so I was playing football with my younger brother. So I was, because see, I was playing football, I was playing tennis, I was playing, I was boxing. What is it? Oh, rugby. Started playing rugby in high school. And someone said, well, Bruce, you should have been like Jim Brown and played lacrosse too. But
Do it all.
right. But no, I did all of that, and of course, the church, in the church as well, because the thing was, part of it, with your parents and mainly your mom, and you're living in the city, and the thing is like, they never minded if you found things that keep you preoccupied. So one, you can stay out of trouble as much as you can.
Right.
But two, was something that was good that could lead to other things.
So was that a point where you discovered that perhaps this was your passion?
I didn't, I'll be honest, I had fun doing it at first, and I'll be honest, I did not realize it until years later when I began to the mega church. It's now called Evangel Cathedral, in Landover, Maryland. It used to be called Evangel Temple in Northeast DC, and where I lived was in Northwest, and I could take the subway train. The church sat right there, so I became part of the youth group there, and it was more there at this church that I had become more involved. A girlfriend of mine who was like my big sister, she played upright bass and electric bass, Donna Curtis. We were always hanging out, and of course, typical musicians, you're learning this thing, and I went through 2 majors before I started studying music. I was an English minor and a business ad major, and then I switched from that to broadcast journalism, and I was taking a snare drum class because I just wanted to
So music's always been a part of your life.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
So after you got out of college, then where did the music take you?
Well, while I was in college, I'll say, if you don't mind.
No.
While I was in college, while I was studying, I was gigging and all that as well, and and started traveling, and learning about the professional thing of working as a sideman, and then but it had taken me to where this reggae band, Black Sheep, which is one of the reasons why I'm in this Hall of Fame. It was the first. See, Black Sheep was the first African American reggae band to ever play on the West End steps of the U.S. Capitol.
Oh wow!
And they were one of just several that had played on the steps of reggae groups. Because if I remember it correct, the other groups that did it was Bob Marley and the Wailers, Black Uhuru, Culture. I'm trying to remember. Who else was it? Yeah, that was it, other than us. And that's when you really look at it, and think of, what? Yeah.
That's a pretty wow.
Yeah, and so, but with this band, while I was studying with this group, there's a lot of things with this group I got to do because this group was well known throughout the Eastern Seaboard, and there was this thing with this group. We were known as the most educated reggae band on the East Coast because what it was, a keyboard player had his master's, had his master's in education, and he was teaching, and playing music. The bass player has his degree in electronics. And and was a musician. He was from Barbados. The percussionist, and I love him to pieces because I learned a lot from this brother, Abasi Johnson. He's a master African drummer, and he worked with the greatest African drummers like Baba Olatunji, who ended up working with Fleetwood Mac at some point, and then Dantes Harris, a sax player, he went to Howard at first, but then he went to UDC, and he was there at UDC, and I was at UDC. I received a scholarship there in '88 in jazz studies. So in other words, basically, it's all these guys. They had their degrees and teaching, or they were working on.
And that makes a pretty powerful team.
Yeah. And funny part about it for me, when I was in college, I'm studying and you're just the typical thing and gigging and all that. I ended up teaching, privately. And what was funny, it was like some of the guys at the time from other colleges like George Washington University, Georgetown University, American University, some of the percussion students there, they would come to see me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was really nice because up there, it was kind of a thing where everybody, even if you didn't personally know everyone, they knew about you or who you were and what you were doing.
So you had developed a reputation, and people were starting to seek you out.
Yeah, and it was, I didn't at the time. The way I looked at it was just, okay, hey, what? You want to learn something from me? Okay, come to the house such and such a time, and this and this and this, and yeah, and did it, and it was funny. I remember, who was it? It was a guy, one of the guys. Everyone told me, he said, Bruce, you don't realize what you're doing. And I'm like, what? He said, okay, you're in school and you're studying. Music, right? I said, yeah. And you're studying percussion. I said, yeah. He said, you're teaching while you're doing it? I said, oh, yeah, but, I said, well, just somebody wants to learn something, and That was how I saw it.
Right.
You know.
Right. But it was more than that.
Right.
And it was having an impact on people, a positive impact.
Yes, and you don't. What happens is that sometimes you don't realize it, until.
You look back years later.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think it's part of your legacy that you've kind of made your mark on all these people who have probably had an impact on people's lives themselves. So you kind of spread your tentacles out there, and I think that's helped you to become who you are today. And you had talked earlier about how being the youngest in a band influenced your learning and becoming the musician that you became and have become and still nurture to become. That's allowed you to be in the Hall of Fame. So tell me a little bit more about that.
About as a youth, I mean, being the youngest. Well, what it is like, let's say, in the jazz sector. In the jazz, I mean, in music, but it's in all forms of music. But I really learned about this, in church, and in the jazz sector, where when you're this young guy who's who wants to play and trying to learn, what it is, you're sitting with these elders, if you will, who are masters, and what's funny is it's like it's what we call it's the old school, the old oral tradition, of teaching, kind of like what Plato would do. Right. When you sit, or let's say, the Messiah, if you will, right? People sitting around, you have someone speaking, and they're listening, and they're taking notes, and that was how I learned, because they made me understand. They said, "Hey, look, man, what you need to do." They'll say, "Hey, look, do this, do this, do this, do this." But they can always tell if if you're a kid, if you're humble, they'll let you sit in and play, even if you make a couple flubs here and there. They deal with that because they know that your heart is, if you want to say, in the right place or pure. You want to learn. And then you had some of us kids, we thought we were hot shots until you had the elder turn around and it's like martial arts. You think you know something until yeah. And then sensei turn around and have you on the floor looking up at the ceiling.
So they had you looking up at the ceiling a few times.
Yeah.
But that's helping you teach others as well.
Right. It's and that's how you learn. The way to me is like your greatest teachers are some of your best students. Being a student and what they call the student of the game. My thing was, for me, I was just wanting to absorb and whatever, and I'll say this too. The physical part and all of that, learn all of that, and great. But what they made me understand too was like, okay, all this is physically, everything that you do physically, that's just your vocabulary that you need. So when you really need to speak, and because music is a powerful medium, sometimes we fail to realize it's something that is intangible, but yet it becomes tangible when it touches. And they made me appreciate, wow, how powerful this thing is that it can heal, but in that same breath, that same music that can heal, it's that same music that can hurt, and it affects us. It affects us as human beings, and And that's why I say, like some of the musicians that's what I'm saying, there were Grammy-winning musicians that I had an opportunity to be with that was into healing music. First, I was young, and I was like, huh? Well, they're not in church doing it.
Right.
But then I began to see and realize, and as I began to study and learn, I was like, okay. There's this positive and negative thing, that's, to this, like in martial arts, that yin yang.
Right.
These things you learn, these spiritual attributes, these principles, these things that what makes the music what it is. Okay, and let's say for instance, like in jazz, you hear all these, you hear all these cats. You hear these cats talk about colors. They talk about colors and they talk about hues. And the reason why they do this, it's these colors that, like, they said with like the mood ring.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't need the ring.
No.
Yeah. And what it is, these colors set the tone of what you're presenting and what you're going to speak on. And even when you have no lyrics, but the music still speaks.
Speaks to you.
Right, it still speaks. And that was why, it was things like that. That was because I'm being honest, I used to scratch my head. I was like, colors? Huh? You're just playing. Yeah, no, but now I understand.
But there's more to music.
You're right. It's much, yeah. It's much more. The tonalities, the harmonics, and each harmonic, is an entity in itself. I'm not trying to sound, but the reality is,
There's much more to music than meets the eye.
You're right. You're right. Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about your history with world-renowned players, in addition to yourself being that you're one of them as well. So tell us, who you played with and what that experience has been like for you and how that's inspired and been part of your life.
Wow.
Long list, right?
Yeah. I have to get the paper out. But I've been fortunate because, like for instance, in school, in the schools I went to, the instructors, they were top-rate professional musicians, legendary musicians, and I had the opportunity to do gigs with them, and like I say, for instance, the big band director I was studying under at Montgomery Junior College in Rockville, Maryland, Bill Potts. Bill Potts played piano in the Buddy Rich Band, and he wrote for the Buddy Rich Band. He wrote for the Johnny Carson Band. He wrote for Paul Anka. He wrote for Paul Williams. I mean, I can go just
keep going on.
right. And this guy, I miss Bill, and we always joke about it because if you see the way this guy looked, gray goatee, and a white goatee, he looks like Colonel Sanders, and the guy would talk. But only time, of course, amongst us students, it had to be quiet. In other words, look, you little kids, stay quiet, and I'm going to share something with you.
Right.
Bill Potts, I'm just saying Bill Potts was one of them. Another one, and I love this man to pieces, when I was at UDC, University of DC. Calvin Jones. Calvin Jones played trombone. He played it well. He could play all brass, and he plays piano and played upright. And he could play guitar. He is very close friends to the legendary jazz and blues guitarists that I got to meet later to work with because they both come out of Memphis. Calvin Newborn. Was it Calvin Jones. Sorry. Calvin Jones worked with Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra. And Thad Jones is the brother of Elvin Jones, who was the drummer with John Coltrane.
Okay.
Okay. All right. He worked with Ray Charles. He worked with Count Basie Orchestra. He worked with Duke Ellington Orchestra. I mean, the list, Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, the list goes on and on, you know.
Right.
So I studied upright bass, I think for like 2 semesters.
Right.
And bass instructor Carol DeShield, he's up there in DC. He's worked with Phyllis Hyman, Roberta Flack, Donny Hathaway, Stephanie Mills.
Another one that the list goes on.
Right. And but that's the thing, was like, it's a beautiful thing, is that when you're learning from the best. And the funny part about it, a lot of these guys were right there in DC, in this DC metro area. But it began to make sense too, because DC being the political capital of the world. Of course, New York was the hub, but the place that they also like to go to
Was DC.
It was DC. It was the nation's capital, and then also with the military bands, you know, there too. I'll say this: a lot of these guys that I got to hang around with and work with and learn to study with, I was blessed. I was fortunate. I mean, you're in the nation's capital, and arts, of course, arts and culture is, whether people like it or not, it's some of the greatest in the world. That, I mean, like the Smithsonian.
Yeah, tell us about that. You were saying something earlier about what's happening there.
Oh, yeah. What it is they're doing is the DC Legendary Musicians, I forgot it right, Incorporated. What it is, they set up the Hall of Fame, the DC Legendary Musicians Hall of Fame. And they've already, I remember I went, 16? Last year it was 15. I went, they had the inaugural ceremony. And what they're doing, they had the ceremony in Martin Luther King Library. And see, the MLK Library is one of the largest libraries in the country. So what they're doing, they've gotten the okay, and they're building this Hall of Fame shrine, if you will, just like Cleveland, of all these local musicians, from home, who've contributed to American music, and I still, to this day, I still pinch myself because I see my little name, and then you see the likes of Duke Ellington, Billy Eckstine, Marvin Gaye, Eddie Kendrick from the Temptations. Over a third of the group of the Temptations are from Washington, D.C. And then my father's cousin, Bobby Womack, legendary R&B singer, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And you're part of this group that's going to be going into the Smithsonian.
Right. And what it is, it's musicians, what it is, honoring musicians past from DC metro area, past and present. Right. And the way I look at it, we're going to see the future ones, the future.
And that's quite an honor.
Yeah, sometimes for me it's surreal, and I'll share this with you. I was in junior high school, 8th grade, had a history book, and I remember an assignment that we had to do. I didn't care too much about the assignment, but I knew I had to do it, right? So
we all
anyway,
have those.
right. So I go, when I'm home, and I open up the book, but when I open up the book, it was just ironic. I open it up, and I see this picture, and I read it. And guess who it was? George Clinton in this geography book.
Wow.
Yeah, and if I remember it well, it was a concert. I think it was a concert he did on the Monument Grounds in D.C. Yeah, I mean, this history book now. It was one of the Rand McNally history books that you use for
In school.
In school, and I remember looking at that, and I'm like, oh man, George Clinton. Wow, I never thought, I mean, I knew he, him being in there. I'm like, and I said to myself, wow, I'd never do anything like that. I never thought, not saying I couldn't, I just never thought, and now.
You in the history books.
and I'm like, wow, it's humbling. I'll be honest. I mean, it's great. It's it's nice. I can sit back and say, yeah, okay, mm-hmm. But in reality, but it's humbling.
Well, you've been through life's up and downs, which has me thinking about sometimes our life's trials are our greatest teachers.
Yeah.
So, would you like to share with us maybe one or two of your trials that have been your greatest teachers?
Woo woo.
Good question, huh?
Woo woo woo. Yeah, there were a lot of in it. It's a lot of ups and downs. Let's say, part of it. One of the things I learned is in this medium, when you're learning about this medium, you spend a lot of time. When you actually pursue it, and you're doing it, and you're studying. And I said, there's a lot of time that you spend, hours and hours, learning about this craft, from the aspect of performing, from the aspect of teaching, and from the aspect of writing. A lot of hours, I'm gonna be honest. There were times, my buddies, some of my buddies, I didn't hang out. I wanted to hang out, but I laughed at it because when I was funny because when I was in junior high school, and I was in the choir. See the guys, some of the guys that would laugh. Oh, you're singing in the choir. And now when I look back at it, when I got into college, and I would think about some of those guys, and I would see, I'd say, okay, well, I'm doing something, and I'll be honest, even when I went home last year to go to this for this ceremony, and I'm walking with my pop, and we're walking through the neighborhood, went to the store, grocery store, or whatever, and I would see some of my old friends and neighbors. It's like, hey, Bruce, man, what you doing, man? I said, well, I'm here for this Hall of Fame ceremony thing. And said, yeah, we heard about it. They said, man, they said, man, we look at you like the same way we look at Still Pulse, man. I'm like,
well, you can say it was your dedication to perfecting that craft and becoming who in your mind you wanted to become, regardless of what steps you had to take.
Right.
And some of those struggles that you've been through, which being a little criticized of that foundation step that, we all have to start somewhere.
We have to start somewhere.
To get to our highest achievement. And it does take hard work, and it takes dedication, and it seems that you stayed your course regardless of what you stayed your course regardless of what came across your path.
Yeah.
And some of that helped to mold you to who you are today.
And you're right, because in that, one of the things I really learned, and I'm grateful for it, you know, I say, when it's not, I say, well, it's not working. Look, man, it's not working. You need to find something else, man. It's not working.
Get a real job.
Yeah, you know, and I was like, no, I said, no, this is working, you know. And you can see in this, and see, here's the thing I've learned in this music business, is that, and I'm grateful for this because a lot of times the average person would think, okay, when you know, oh, you want to go and play music, boom, lights, shiny stuff is what I call it, you know.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But when you really begin to see and look at, not just act, you know, when you're learning the craft and all that, but then you begin to learn the business of music. It's not, trust me, it's not always lights, because everybody sees you like on a stage. Oh no, it's great, wonderful. You know, people see you. But what it is, it's a job. And you're sitting there doing this job to the best of your ability that you can. And it's more than just goes on with the job. I mean, just that stage thing. Logistics. Making sure you get, and I've been guilty of this, you know, making sure you have everything you have before you make it to the gig. You know. Yeah. Okay, you know. You know, that, and you know, even like I said, when working and you're making money doing this, you know, just basic things, taking care of your bills, you know, having to pay bills. So that means you're going to have to work your butt off. And you work, you know, and what do you begin to, okay, well, there's one gig. Okay, well, oh, 2 gigs, 3 gigs. And you begin to understand the business, because I learned it, I'll be honest, from the jazz aspect of it. When you tour, X number of gigs, just like, you know, X number, you know, you're doing X number of gigs a week, and depending on whom you're working with, you get X amount of dollars. So you figure, okay, if I'm getting X amount of dollars, okay, because I got to pay my rent coming up and my car note and this, right? So and in this business, and especially when I've been independent, I've been pretty much most part independent. So you have to be, it's like your headhunter. In other words, you have to go and find the work. So in order to find the work, you have to make sure this tool is together, these tools are together. So when you present them, you know, oh, okay. Oh yeah, this guy. Okay. Oh yeah, we heard about that guy. Yeah, can we call that guy there? Let's give him a shot. You know.
And along with that, it's having that passion for music to endure that aspect of being a musician, because a lot of people in the creative arts, they are criticized for going into it as a profession. But I think people don't realize it's not just work for musicians. It's a heart center.
It's a conviction.
Yes.
I know, I agree.
And you know, it's important. It's a strong part of their belief in themselves and what their gifts are. Because like you said earlier, as a musician, you're giving something to people.
Exactly.
Through your music. And
sometimes
yourself. That's more powerful than whatever you can create in some other jobs that aren't as creative and expressive, because music is an expression.
Yes.
And so, as a musician, career musician,
mm-hmm.
what would you say has impacted your life, and how do you feel you've impacted others?
For me, it's work ethic. And, well, I've been fortunate, because one of the things I was taught was you want to make everything second nature. Work it to where, in other words, learn and work this to the point where you're the last person they have to worry about. and they can go ahead and get whatever else they need. They know it's covered back there. So, okay, I've got this and this and this, because if you don't mind, I'll give an example. In church, play at St. John's Presbyterian Church. Hey, Kevin. Kevin Crenshaw, a music director. He's always joked about it. We joke about it, throughout time. It's like, when, we go to rehearsal, he'll send email, the band, music and tracks. And it's funny when you get to rehearsal, and when I'm looking at these charts, because like I said, because like in my background, I play contemporary Christian, contemporary gospel, and I understand to a finite degree who's right, what part of the country it's coming from, or the world,
right,
and this and this and this. So, I'm like, so for instance, I'm sitting in the drum booth and I'm looking at the chart and I'm like, okay, I know this tune, but if he wants to, I wonder if he wants to do this original version that's here, because see what I've looked at in, like, let's say in Christian music, and they can say what they want. They learned well from the Motown machine. And the Motown machine, I love it because, in other words, those writers and producers, they could write one tune and have 10 different groups in that, in that label. Saying, great tune, one tune that's great. Everybody does a version of it. Boom, it's a hit. So in Christian music, they kind of see that, and I love it. I ain't mad at them. If something works, it works. So, but anyway, I'd sit there, I'm going through this, and I'll ask the music director, I'll ask Kevin, I say, hey Kevin, okay, I see this, but do you want to do this exactly how they done it, like this, or did you want to do it more like such and so did on this album, and this and this and this and this? He's like, no, I'm not sure yet. I'll think about it, but don't worry about it right now. And then we get done with, we'll get done with rehearsal, and he said, I forgot about that other version. I said, man, this is like Motown. One tune and 50 million bands play it.
And that's what you brought to him.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But
so how do you feel that you've been influenced by the music that you've been exposed to all of your life, and how that is impacting where you're taking yourself now in the education that you're going into to teach again, and that kind of path that you're taking yourself on?
I'll be honest, I'm really grateful, because, well, what it is, when I'm going back to school and audition, I'm going to finish up the degree, and I know at some point I'll be teaching along the way, but what it is for me, and basically what I have to share for me, is what I've learned. If it was given to me, I cannot do anything other than give it to someone, because one of the things I learned, and I'm glad, and some people don't like to hear it, but the reality is, we never played there's what we think that sometimes we're playing, that's this new thing, had already been played before. We just don't, what it was, someone else had done it before we did. But the thing is, it's, in other words, what I'm getting at, it's based on theme and variation. They created the theme, and all we've done later is variate on that theme. No, not say, no, that's your variation, and that's great. It's your take, and it's beautiful. I can tell you, some people, they were 38 hot. Yeah. And I said, but man, this is my tune. I said, yeah, I know, man, but Yeah, but I said, I can just tell from what you've written, I can give you about 5, 6 different influences you got in there. I said, it's not a bad thing. I said, no, it's a beautiful thing. I said, because that was how I learned. It was, we are influenced by what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell. And as Bob Marley said, vibrations, because that's what they are. Okay, that's another story. But again, for me is the aspect of I'm grateful that I know where this understanding where the music come from, know where the music is, and know where the music's going. And if anything to teach for me, to have an opportunity to teach to youth, and to me, which is really needed, is to teach them where it comes from. Because I'll be honest, when I was a kid, when I first started studying music, man, I couldn't play jazz. No joke. I couldn't play jazz. And I understand, because although I was around it, but I didn't care. But I didn't understand where it came from. And it's very important, I would say, in this idiom. When you learn about music, whether it's like spinach, even though you don't like that spinach is good for you. Do that. So you can have, because I've heard so many people say this. If you don't know where you're coming from, you sure ain't gonna know where you're going.
Well, and you can't have an appreciation for what it is that's right in front of you.
Right.
And you take it for granted rather than seeing the value and the true gift that it is, that it's giving you, that then you can turn around and give to others.
Exactly. So, because I understand, because I remember when I taught privately, and I was trying to get kids to understand, and I've seen, and it didn't, some kids it didn't matter, and I would get frustrated, but then turn around, I realized that no, I was one of them, and I did that too.
Right.
So I was like, okay. Yeah, but
so talking about kids, and we'll close out on this. If you had any words of wisdom for someone who wants to be a musician or is a musician, and it's a passion of theirs, what would you like to share with them based on what your life has been like, and just something that would be of value to them?
I would say, if this is something that he or she, I have to say that.
Yes.
If it's something that he or she wants to do, I would say to them, first of all, where do you want to go with this when you pursue this? And depending on how far you want to go with it, I'll just be honest, put in the work. Put in the work. Of course, it's always, I'll say this. When God told Adam, you're going to have to work by the sweat of your brow, man. So you're going to have to put your hand to the plow. You got to work.
Right.
You got to work.
Put the effort in.
Put in the effort. What you put into it is what you get out of it. And don't be upset. Excuse me, I know we have, if you half-ass. If you half-ass at it, and then you're mad because that's what's coming out, you haven't made that assessment.
Right.
So, the thing is, think about what you want to get out of this, because what you're going to get out of it is going to be, I know it sounds backwards, but I do that for a reason. Because see, what you're going to get out of it is what you got to put into it. In other words, you put a nickel in,
You gotta nickel out.
you put in $1, you know. Yeah, so the thing is, take the time, you know, and it doesn't have to be, you don't rush. And that was another thing I learned, and I had to learn. Don't rush it. Well, okay, I understand, okay, if you're in school, they say, well, you have to work on this, so that means you prioritize and work your time, where you have to get that done. But still, in the big scheme of it is take your time and learn so you won't miss that detail. Because I've had this happen personally on a gig years back when I was young, and there was one spot I was missing. You know, everything went well, but this one spot, people like, it was a great show. It was at a Kennedy Center. So I'm like, I'm about 25, you know. But anyway, we go backstage, and keyboard player comes to tell me, he said, man, good hit, but I'm gonna be honest with you. There's this one part you've been having this problem with. I'm like, oh, I knew not to say, oh, what part are you talking about? Because I already knew. And so I'm out, yeah, and he turned around and he said, look, man, I want you to stay in this band. I dig you. But you need to work on that and clear that up so you can move on.
And having that experience helped you strengthen from now on and to practice harder and to get better at your skill.
Exactly. And the thing is, and trust me, and I understand, we live in a society now that, if we can't get it in, well, I'll be honest. It is, and it truly is a disposable society now. They don't like to hear that, but it is what it is. And we have to make ourselves, I don't care if it's music or whatever it is, we need to sit down and take our time. I understand, because we all understand deadlines and this, well, I got to get this done such and such a time, but when we really, just for music, and I'm understanding why they call it a craft, and if you really, for anyone who really want to learn this craft,
As an art,
you have to put in the time, which means you have to take the time,
That was an awesome interview. Thank you.
Oh,
I appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
Thank you. Because I can run my mouth all day, but no, thank you guys. Thank you guys. Trev, thank you, man. You guys, really appreciate it, because
you better put your flat feet on the ground. I brought you a brand new Mustang, 19